Hello, Crafty Crandall here, and today I want to review this Holbein Acrylic Gouache set. I received this for Christmas, and it was something that I had asked for, and I am so excited to have it in my possession and to start using it in my gouache paintings. So without any further ado, let's get into it. We see here that it is nicely packaged in this box. It did originally have some plastic wrap over the top, but I removed it prior to shooting this video. If I go ahead and open up the cover here, we can see that the paints again are nicely packaged. They come with an informational pamphlet here. We'll just open this up a little. This gives us some information on like the whole range of Holbein paint. We'll take a look at that in a bit. Then we have our tubes of paint. Each tube has a pretty vibrant color on it. These paints, to my understanding, are not only very opaque, but also very more pastel in nature than maybe the gouache that I currently have. So I'm excited to try these out. I will do swatches for you here today, and then I will also try painting something with these paints so that we can see how they work. We can see that each of the tubes comes with a permanency rating in the back. Some of them have decent permanency ratings, some of them have less decent permanency ratings, all having to do with, I assume, the color and pigments that they used in the paint, although I admit, again, I'm not well versed in what makes, quality paint versus non-quality paint, so don't quote me on any of that. But let's get into the swatches of these and see how these puppies look on paper, shall we? Alright, I am doing these swatches in my Etchr hot press sketchbook. So I'm going to swatch out all of the colors. I have already listed the color names and their color numbers on the page so that I have them, so that I know which colors I have, because to my understanding you can buy these in individual colors. So if I want to expand my collection from here past the 18 color set, then I will do that. So here is the first color. We're going to do D002 or Carmine. I'm going to attempt not to drop this. Oh, that's what happened. Hang on. Wait for it. Wait for it. First impressions is that these are super nice to work with. I will be curious to see how the like cracking factor is after having painted with them. That'll be a better test though for when I actually paint something. As we can see here, the deep yellow, actually I used a bit too much water, or had too much water left on my brush, I think. Either that or it's a more wet consistency than the other ones. And just to be clear here, I am not using any excess water with these. I am cleaning my brush between each one. So this should, in theory, be like the most, you know, opaque version of this color. I will say that deep yellow still hasn't dried yet, and this light green was rather streaky going on the paper. The Ultramarine Deep seems to have an issue where when I squeezed the tube, I not only got paint, I also got quite a bit of water. So I'm not sure if these paints need to be like stirred up or something, but I just want to note that for this one, there was some water that did seem to get onto my palette where I was squeezing out the paint. So it's probably more watered down than it would be if I like stirred up that paint. So at this point, I had swatched all of the colors and I just wanted to play around with some color mixing and see how the colors looked when they weren't just their base variety. I don't typically mix gouache as much as I do my watercolors just because I find it more difficult. The colors get muddy a lot faster, but I wanted to see if these differed from the gouache that I already have, and boy did they. So these look really well when mixed and actually were very easy to mix together. So I really enjoyed that process, and I think that I will continue to try to mix these moving forward as well. I'm very excited to see what illustrations I can create with these, and I can't wait to use them in more pieces. Here I just did a regular old color wheel, theory wheel, I guess, with the red, blue, and yellow. And then after this, I ended up moving to a cyan, magenta, excuse me, and a lemon yellow. So that was really fun as well. I think that all in all, these colors mixed very well. And then what I did is I put some black over the top so that I could see just how opaque and well the black worked as well. Definitely impressed with the quality of these paints. And in fact, I think I've found my favorite red color of all time in this paint. The Carmine red color is literally the red that I have been waiting for my entire life when it comes to paint. I absolutely love it, and I'm so excited to have it because really it's been a struggle to find a solid red, like what I would consider to truly be red. Normally when you get paint, it's either an orange tone red or a pink tone red, and it drives me nuts, but this red is gorgeous. So that is probably my favorite color out of the 18 color set, though when I buy more colors, I'm sure that I will find a gold mine of other colors that I absolutely love in this range. They have so many beautiful colors to choose from, and I can't wait to try more of them. Okay, so here I have all of the swatches that I did. Just for reference, this is what my palette looked when I was finished. And I also just wanted to touch on, because I said that I would when I opened it, is the pamphlet that these came with. So it has here like the whole color registry that you can get for these. And so the top part is the acrylic gouache. The bottom part is actually for their designer gouache set, which I believe I have a couple of tubes of that as well. But obviously in this case, I'm just looking at the acrylic gouache, and I can immediately tell that there are some colors that I'm going to want to order. So specifically a burnt umber is something that I will probably want. I love the look of the lilac color, so I will probably order one of those. And then the quote unquote flesh color. I'll probably want to order that so that I can start doing some portraits with this, just because it'll be much easier to start with like a base of a skin tone instead of trying to mix my own. That is something that I said, if you watched my goals video, that I want to improve on, so that is the plan. And then if we look up at the ash green color, like, is that not a gorgeous color? So I probably also want to order that one just because it's gorgeous. So that is at this point what I plan on ordering. I might also get a neutral gray, and then probably just like a bigger tube of the black and white. So immediately that's where I can see my collection of these expanding. And without any further ado, let's jump into actually using these on like a finished painting, shall we? All right, so here we are. I have sketched out some mountains that I kind of gained some inspiration from Google. I tend to do that. I will like Google something, and then instead of using any one reference as like my specific reference, I will just kind of pull from all of the different scenery that I'm seeing on Google or whatever I'm searching. I will kind of pull from a lot of different sources. So these were just compilations of different mountainous scenes that I wanted to paint. The top one was kind of influenced by more of like a Japanese style painting, in that it's very like monochromatic, and then you'll see the sun will be a pop of that gorgeous carmine red, very much so inspired by the carmine red, because finally I have a red that actually looks good when being that pop of red color. So that was my inspiration for the top piece. Kind of wanted to make it more of like a snowy landscape, so you know, not exactly like Mount Fuji, because I think that the silhouette of Mount Fuji is very different, but kind of, you know, reminiscent of that style of painting. And then moving down, I actually set up my palette, if you look to the right, in like the color scheme of each of the individual paintings. So the top one was meant to be very monochromatic, the middle one was meant to be more of like a warm toned scene, and then the bottom one was more of a cool toned scene. And I thought that this juxtaposition would be pretty cool looking on just like a regular sketchbook spread. Speaking of sketchbooks, I am using my Etchr sketchbook, my Etchr Labs sketchbook. It is the hot press version, so I do find that I enjoy using gouache paint more on hot press paper than on cold press paper. Something about the texture of cold pressed paper makes gouache very difficult for me to use, and so I appreciate the just non-textured feel of hot pressed paper when using gouache. That's what I used here, and that's pretty much where all of my gouache work lives nowadays, is this Etchr Lab sketchbook. It is basically relegated at this point to be solely my gouache work, which I am totally okay with. I love having different sketchbooks for different purposes, so that works perfectly for me. Now let's speak a little bit more about the paint. This gouache is phenomenal. I love it very much. I, again, can't wait to use it for more pieces, but it applies just phenomenally well. A little paint goes a long way, so I found that I didn't run out of paint on my brush nearly as often as I do with my Arteza gouache, which was fantastic. And as you can see, I mean, I used the paint straight out of the tube. I am using some water with this, as you know, you would expect with a water-based medium, but for the most part, I tend to keep my water use in gouache paint to a minimum, because if you use too much water, that's how you achieve a really streaky effect. And actually, we'll see in a bit, at one point during this illustration on the third painting, I do have a bit of a streaking problem, but I found that these paints also are very forgiving. They're able to kind of work with you instead of against you, which I do, again, just really appreciate. All in all, although these were a very pricey option, again, I received them as a gift from my family, so I didn't personally spend any money. However, I do think that their money was very well spent on these. Like, these paints are worth the money that you're spending, in my personal opinion. Now, again, they do have their light fastness ratings on the tubes so that you can see, they actually call it a permanency rating, but essentially it's the light fastness rating so that you can see how that stacks up. Some of them had very high permanency ratings, some of them did not. So if you're using these for professional work, that might be something that you need to take into consideration. But as I don't really sell any of my paintings, and this is in a sketchbook, I don't really care, to be honest with you. So that's just something to be aware of. But other than that, like, truly, as someone who, albeit is not the best gouache painter on the planet, I think that these are fantastic options for anyone looking to maybe step up their gouache game a little bit, or, you know, invest in a really nice high quality set of gouache. I think this is a fantastic option. I really enjoyed them, and I think that truly they would serve anyone well. I would be interested in hearing if you have other options, like if there are comparable paints to this that you would recommend. I know that the Miyahime gouache is extraordinarily popular on YouTube for whatever reason, but that form factor just doesn't speak to me, so I went with these instead. I really prefer gouache out of the tube. It's just the way that I like to work with gouache, and even in my watercolor palettes, I just don't like having huge wells of paint. It drives me nuts. That's why I don't have any full pans in my watercolor palettes, is because I don't like full pans. I really do like just having like little half pans of paint. So the Miyahime gouache is not for me, but this gouache totally is. I'm reluctant to say the brand name again, just because I've received comments that I say it wrong and I don't want to offend anyone. I truly apologize if I don't pronounce it correctly. But the Holbein Acrylic Gouache is phenomenal, and I would highly, highly recommend it to anyone looking for, again, just a high quality gouache paint, or someone who's looking to maybe invest in a higher quality set above and beyond what they already have. I did also just want to note that in the little pamphlet that I gave you, it mentions how the formula is very similar to a gum arabic gouache, but is actually tempera based, and also that these paints have what they call no color shift. So what you see on your palette, or what you see when you squeeze the paint out of the tube, is what you get when it dries. And I would say that this claim is very accurate. I definitely didn't notice very much color shift at all whatsoever. The only color shift I would say is really just, you know, when you have your light shining down on wet paint, sometimes it looks a bit lighter, but truly that's it. These colors were very true to that claim. I would say that they don't color shift really at all. The other claim that they make is that they dry without brush strokes. Now, would I say that that's accurate? I would say that it is much easier with these paints to not get brush strokes. Like if you kind of play with it a little, you can achieve an effect without brush strokes. But at the same time, I would say that you do still get some brush strokes, particularly in this last painting that you see me painting here. I do still see, like if I'm looking at it right now, I do still see brush strokes like in the bottom, the mid-toned mountain, the blue mountain, and then up on the top of the purple sky, I do still see brush strokes there. So it really depends on how you paint with them, how thick a layer of paint you use, and how many times you go over it with the brush, and how much water you have on your brush. So, you know, are all of their claims 100% accurate? No, not really, but does that detract from how amazing these paints are? Also, no, not really. So just know what you're getting when you get into these. If you have trouble painting without brush strokes, which admittedly is one of my problems when I use gouache, then, you know, just know that you do still have to work with the paint a little. It's not just like a magical cure-all for having too many brush strokes in your painting. That said, I do think that these are easier to use than, say, my Arteza gouache, and I do think that they are maybe less streaky than those. So take that as you will. I hope that this review has been informative for you. Please let me know down below in the comments if you liked it, and let me know if you've used these paints, if you like them yourself, or if you have any other product recommendations for me. I don't really shop for a lot of art supplies, but if there's a product that I'm like dying to try or that's extremely good, I will sometimes pick it up. So I'd be interested to hear. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please, please, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please like this video again if you liked it, and I will see you in the next one. I post art and book related content on this channel, and I post every Tuesday and occasionally on Fridays. Thank you. Bye!